Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Acquisitions Anonymous. This is Bill D'Alessandro, one of your hosts, and this week I am with Heather Anderson. And one of my favorite things about my episodes with Heather is I get to dig into the mind of a lender. So we dig into what it's like to be a lender in late December. We talk about how to avoid letting your deal slip past a New Year's Eve closing, how to avoid being the one closing a deal on New Year's Eve, which is not fun. It's ruined my Christmas at least once. But then we also dig into a really interesting medical trailer manufacturing business. They make trailers that have MRI machines in them. Really interesting business. And it has some interesting FF&E and inventory work in process issues that Heather has some really good insights on how you would finance and value as a buyer. So I hope you enjoy this episode of Acquisitions Anonymous.
Are you looking for a small business to acquire? Well, this book right here is the Bible for people in your shoes. It's the Harvard Business Review Guide to Buying a Small Business. It's the go-to book. But here's the problem. You see this whole book and this little bit? This is the only part that talks about the hardest part of buying a business, finding the right one to buy. And the bad news is it's full of outdated advice and stuff that doesn't work anymore. I'm Michael Girdley. I own 12 companies, including a couple that go out and buy more companies themselves. And I have a podcast where we look at new businesses to buy each and every week. I've looked at thousands of businesses for sale, and I've bought and sold nearly 20 of them. And I'm telling you, the old ways, they don't work anymore. So I made a course with the latest and the greatest, and it's called How to Find a Great Business to Buy. It's laser focused on the new way to run a business search with what works today. So you can play smarter than the sea of buyers who are out there competing against you to try to buy these businesses. And you can get the deal that was meant for you. In the course, you'll learn 3 things. 1, how to narrow your search with a tight thesis. We're hunting with a rifle here, not shotguns. 2, how to scale your outreach to get the most possible leads. This is a numbers game after all. And 3, how to run your funnel like a pro so you can boil down thousands of leads to find your one great deal. Plus, you'll get a couple of exclusive Chili's jokes that I've never published before. So what's not to love? Go to girdley.com/greatbusiness to take the course today.
Heather, I feel like we should have pressed record about 5 minutes earlier because we missed our rant on SBA lenders not reviewing things until the last possible minute before closing.
It was some pretty good stuff. We were pretty fired up about it, and it's true. And I'm sure like right at this moment of our recording, we're like in December here, people are going through this right now, trying to close a deal by the end of the year, and their lender is suddenly asking for stuff that they've never asked for months. It happens.
Well, I was 10 minutes late for this recording session, and I logged in, and Heather goes, "Oh, I'm glad you were late. I need every second to get something done because you're in like your peak slam time here on December 14th, right, Heather?"
Absolutely. And there's deals. I have 3 more deals closing this week, and it's Thursday. So 3 more closing tomorrow. Deals closing on Monday. I have deals closing on Tuesday. So yeah, it is absolutely peak. And there's already deals that were supposed to close this year that have already been rescheduled into the beginning of January. So it's even going to be a busy overflow year this year, which is intense. Bless those people for at least freeing up the end of your December and letting their deal slip into January. Exactly. If you can do it at this point, your seller's not going to freak out. That's always the better path. And I have a few of those that have done that.
Yeah, I was saying before we started recording that I had an SBA deal that had to close on New Year's Eve. I had a notary at my in-laws' house, like on Christmas. And it basically ruined Christmas. And I was like, everybody's like, "Where's Bill?" And I'm like in the other room screaming at the bank, like to try to get them to close. It was the worst Christmas in recent memory. Yeah. It's pretty bad.
Right. And as a lender, I'm sure, I went through a lot of these with other people, not the same, level of pressure that you were under. But yes, year-end closings kind of do ruin Christmas, unfortunately. And it happens every year. And I have other clients who had really rough year-end closings in the past that never forgot them. Like it's been years, and they'll still, when I talk to them and we talk about all kinds of other things, they'll still talk about that. So it is a really bad impression. Not a good thing for a bank to do.
I am still bitter at the bank that shall not be named that we were talking about before we hit record.
Right.
Which has nice people that work there, but their legal department did not do their homework until 4 days before scheduled closing, and then decided that they had problems. Well, I said, your deadline for having problems is long gone.
Yeah.
But we did get it closed. I think the actionable piece of advice to come out of this whole rant is two things. One, don't try to close a deal in December. Just don't. It's because everybody else is trying to close a deal in December, and you can't push it back. Like, it can't slip, and closings always slip. Just don't plan to close a deal in December. If you are thinking you must plan to close a deal in December, start in like August. Like, start way early.
I was going to say July. Yeah, like start early. It's so true. But to your point, you still sometimes can't help the fact that stuff comes up at the very end, because the bank closing counsel doesn't look at deals till the end. So, I think the first piece of advice was the best. Just don't close in December. Try not to do that.
Yeah, if at all possible. And by the way, if you've scheduled your closing for late November, you are also closing in December. You just don't know yet.
Yes, you are. I was just telling Bill that I had a bunch of deals that were supposed to close in November, and they almost all pushed into December because nobody had that sense of urgency yet. And now everybody has that sense of urgency. And so it's crazy. It's crazy.
Yep.
Every year.
Yep. And the other learning is secretly and unexpectedly, the person that often blows up or delays your closing is the legal officer at the lender. Because sometimes they're outside counsel, sometimes they're inside counsel, but they're overburdened. And they usually don't look at it until like they come in on Monday and they're like, what closings are scheduled for this week? And then they read the legal docs. So as a buyer or a seller, if you are on a tight closing timeline, especially for an SBA deal, you need to start making noise at least a month in advance with your lender. Do you have legal sign off early, not the week of close?
And get your purchase and sale agreement in early so that legal has some time to review it. Because those that kind of come in skidding in 2 days before when they expect to close, then the lawyer doesn't have enough time. And I told Bill one other little secret. I've seen lawyers do this. They are very, very busy at this, crunch time, end of a quarter, end of the year. And sometimes they'll throw up smoke. I think I have a problem with this or that, just to buy themselves time. I know of at least one lawyer that did do that on a regular basis. And it wasn't really a problem. Then you sort of kind of resolve it and they'd say, oh, now it's fine. And it was really just to buy themselves time. So that's all the kinds of things that happen when you are in the rush. And, you can avoid the rush any quarter you want by not closing at the end of the quarter. Nobody closes in the beginning of the quarter. Nobody closes in the middle of the quarter. Just try for that as your deadline. It'll be so much better.
It will. It will. Don't ruin your Christmas by trying to close a deal in December.
Right.
Okay. We've got a cool deal today. Michael sent this to us and then promptly skipped out on our recording session. So it's a cool deal though, but we're going to do it anyway. So maybe Heather, you want me to read it and then you'll get first crack at analyzing it?
All right. You do that. That sounds good.
All right. So it's on the screen here if you're following us on YouTube and like to look at it yourself. This is from Biz Buy Sell. It is a medical trailer manufacturing and reconditioning business based in Ohio. So we will get into what that is. It has $7.1 million of revenue. It has $1.1 million of cash flow. And they are asking for $5 million for the business. So it's, roughly 4 point something X. It says they have $2.7 million of FF&E, which I assume is the tools they use to manufacture their trailers. And it says they also have about $900,000 of inventory, which I have to assume are partially manufactured trailers. So there's a lot of valuation intricacies here that we'll get into. But this business was established in 1984, so it's been around a really long time. So it says for almost 4 decades, this well-established, successful operation has been providing exceptional products and client-centered services to its loyal, expanding customer base. From humble beginnings as a garage-based truck repair shop, they have evolved into a large, diversified trucking and transportation services enterprise, specializing in manufacturing and reconditioning medical trailers. The medical trailers house CAT scan machines and MRI machines. This operation is well regarded, nationally recognized, and offers a full menu of diversified yet highly complementary services across 7 profit centers, including custom builds, which are mobile medical trailers and drivable units built to client specs, reconditioning, the same, including cleaning, transport, moving freight from Texas to Alaska and all points in between. Didn't see that coming. Storage, powered storage if needed, and daily monitoring checks. Field service, so mobile repair and maintenance service of these medical trailers, I assume. Shop service, which is extensive repair capabilities, including an industrial paint booth. And then also specialty repairs and fabrication. No job is too complex.
Wow.
The business is constantly evolving and is solidly profitable. It is well positioned and poised for additional growth. All the major capital investment has already been done, and they have a loyal customer base, strong brand equity. All that's missing is a motivated ownership group ready to capitalize on that momentum and exploit the high margin, profitable transportation and services landscape. It says they've got 23,000 square feet of building and it's leased. It has 32 employees. All of the FF&E, which you'll remember is $2.7 million of FF&E. And they say all the inventory is also included in the asking price, the $900,000 of inventory. So if you were to value those at face value, which I'm dubious about, that is $3.6 million of hard assets out of the $5.0 million purchase price. So they've got a leased facility. It's 2,300 square feet on a land plot covering 10 acres. They got 14 extra size work bays. They've got a paint booth bay. It leases for $14,000 a month. And the lease expires on December 31st, 2023, which is in like 2 weeks. But it does say there are 3 additional 5-year renewal options. So that's very good.
Yeah.
So it seems like you could be there for 15 years if you want, because there's a fair bit of investment been put into the space, it sounds like, in FF&E. Competition, it says competitive density of this business is somewhat mitigated by the long tenure and the brand reputation, basically how long they've been around and how good they are. There's a wide disparity of competitive pressure depending on the business segments, with the medical rebuild and transport being more specialized and having more limited competitive presence versus the heavy truck repair. The capital-intensive nature of this business model, equipment, tools, and facility, does provide an entry barrier. Under growth and expansion, they say one of the most promising aspects of the offering is the growth that awaits you. Number one, the addition of a second shift in the shop or expansion of Saturday service. Presently, there's a full 8-hour, 5-day work week shift fully employed and utilized. The physical open capacity is already in place. They just need to recruit quality personnel to fill a second shift to exploit their already in place capital investment. And then number 2, the introduction of an aggressive sales and marketing staff in concert with the marketing budget necessary to drive new business, which is basically what every business for sale says. Do more marketing. And it makes me go, well, why are you not doing the marketing? If it's such a slam dunk. The financing, $500,000 is apparently the lender is pre-screened and it requires only 10% or $500K down. So this smells priced to perfection for an SBA deal. $5 million exactly, all included, and 10% down. So
I'm surprised they didn't say it. SBA pre-qualified, which it isn't, but yeah, it is a good fit potentially for an SBA loan. Yes.
I'm very surprised they did not come out and say SBA pre-qualified, but this broker, Hal Fetter from Murphy Business and Financial Services, looks like he knows what he's doing.
He may have heard one of our podcasts,
He might be. Maybe he's a listener. What's up, Hal?
Maybe he said, okay, fine, I won't do that anymore. No, I think this looks like a good company. I kind of like a lot of things about it. I think the price multiple might be a little high, but I mean, there's 2 things that stand out right away. First, for me, anything in the medical space, we like that. That's obviously essential and growing as the population ages. And anything repair and maintenance, repairing stuff as opposed to trying to sell new stuff is always more consistent, or it should be more consistent over time than trying to sell new stuff. So I like those 2 things right off the bat. Sounds like, you've got 32 employees. You've got some really specialized skill sets here. Those are maybe the more challenging parts of it. Who are the mechanics? What kind of specialized training do you have to run this business well? But it sounds to me like it was maybe more of a truck repair company that ended up getting some medical clients somewhere along the way and then really diving into specializing in that industry. They didn't say that it's 100% medical, though. And the one thing that made me wonder about that was that they said they compared it to just regular truck repair. So it sounds like maybe they're doing both. What do you think, Bill?
It does seem like they're doing both. I mean, they talked about they started in a garage, kind of fixing trucks, and now they've moved into this. I agree. It would be disappointing to pull back the curtain on the financials and find that this is mostly a truck repair business that occasionally does MRI trailers.
Right. That would not be what we're looking for. If it's doing mostly MRI and CAT scan trailers and all the different services that they listed around that, then I really kind of like this business. I would imagine you can cover big geography as well if you have this kind of specialty, because they are trailers. They can just drive to you, I would imagine, right?
Yeah. So this industry is a super interesting one. So I don't know, Heather, if you've ever received an MRI in like a trailer. Have you ever patronized one of these things?
I have not received one in a trailer, but I've certainly seen them around my town, parked in different medical office parking lots. Definitely.
Yeah. Yeah. So they're basically what this is it looks like a box, like a trailer, like a legitimate shipping container trailer. And inside is a real deal hospital grade MRI machine. And it's like hooked up to mains power coming from a building, and it sits on a parking lot. And your doctor, if you need an MRI, they will tell you to go to the trailer. It's not a service you buy as a consumer. It is basically a service that is provided to hospitals. So what has been a really interesting business that is not this business, but is buying and owning these MRI trailers and leasing them out to hospitals. You can charge exorbitant amounts because the hospitals charge exorbitant amounts for these scans to insurance, because insurance reimburses them pretty well. So I think this kind of boom is over, but over the last kind of 10 years, there was a big boom in these mobile MRI trailers because a lot of hospitals are wanting to add new MRI machines, or as cities grow around hospitals, right, and space inside the hospital is at a premium. You can't put patient beds in the parking lot, but you can put an MRI machine in the parking lot. So it allows that, and also you don't always have utilization on your MRI machine. So a lot of times, smaller local hospitals or even private practice groups, the MRI will be there 2 days a week, and they just schedule their MRIs on those 2 days, and then the trailer moves to a different place. So this has been a really big trend in medical space, over the last decade or so. And I think that's a tailwind, but that's something you would want to understand as a buyer, because those people are your end market here, right? A lot of times they are not the hospitals directly. A lot of times they are whole separate businesses that just own a bunch of these trailers and lease them out to hospitals. So you'd want to understand kind of the underlying trends in their business to see if they'd be buying more trailers from you in the future.
All right, taking a quick pause here. I have something to tell you. This is Michael. I hate bookkeeping. I hate bookkeeping. I hate doing HR. I hate doing all that kind of stuff. But for bookkeeping, I have found a solution. It is my friend Charlie's business called CloudBookkeeping.com. So that's CloudBookkeeping.com. They are your perfect partner if you want to get bookkeeping out of your hair and focus on making your your customers happier and more successful. So please give them a call. Call Charlie, CloudBookkeeping.com. Tell them we sent you. They're a great way if you're a business buyer, if you're a business owner, you're tired of hassling with getting your bookkeeping done. He's got a whole fleet of people that are well-trained and work for him. He's located here in San Antonio, so I can tell you because of that, he's awesome. And they're a great partner for you to potentially call to help with all your bookkeeping needs so you can do the important stuff in your business rather than worry about getting your books right. So give Charlie a call, cloudbookkeeping.com. And now back to the episode.
I've even looked at an MRI business that was connected to the facility, to the building that the hospital was in, but those are owned separately a lot of times too. And to your point, when I remember looking at that business, thinking it was really challenging because they're sort of captive. They are in that building. You're not moving that MRI machine, and you are stuck with those doctors and those patients that are coming and going out of that building. This, would seem to be a much better business in a lot of ways, but you are moving a very expensive, I would imagine, very sensitive piece of machinery that has to be calibrated just right. So I imagine there's a lot that goes into moving it, what the trailer has to have, the kind of specs the trailer has to have in order to move a machine like that safely without doing damage.
Yeah. And you've got to kind of put it into, you got to shut it down and wrap it up and secure it before you leave. And then you got to basically unpack it when you get there. And that is why I think that this business lists transport and storage as other parts of their ancillary income streams, because I bet, they actually will drop the trailer in the parking lot for you. They kind of become full service and they unpack it and hook it up, all that stuff. Or if it's got to leave parking lot A, but doesn't need to be in parking lot B until Tuesday, they'll keep it in their facility. It says powered storage. I think a lot of times they need to be kept on. Like if you power them down, you've got to recalibrate them and stuff. So maybe it needs to be powered, and there's all this regulatory too, this whole area, like inspections, cleanings, like all this stuff. The maintenance of them is a real deal as well. So it seems like they offer that service.
Yeah. Well, so barriers to entry here are pretty good. I'd want to learn, like you said, who are the customers? Are they small businesses? I guess they kind of are. They're kind of small healthcare businesses. Yeah, that own these MRI machines. Some could be big, but you'd really want to know the landscape of your customers here and how they've, they did make it clear there's a competitive landscape here. There are competitors. It's not like there's none. And I guess that's the other side of being mobile and being able to serve, maybe a wider geography, is that you probably have competitors that are from a few states away, who offer similar services. So it'd be really interesting to understand who your customer base is and how you compete, but keeping those 32 employees, because I did the math, it's $220,000 of revenue per employee in this business. So your 32 employees are all probably really, really important to keep, like maybe all of them. And that would make this, that would be a risk in this in terms of transition, is really knowing that you could retain those people. They wouldn't go to the competition or to something else.
Yep. The one thing I do like about this versus, say, a different business that requires really skilled labor is I'm assuming that this labor is not licensed. It's not like a licensed plumber or a licensed electrician or, these or HVAC tech, like these things that are just so in demand. I guess not HVAC tech, but like a plumber or an electrician. You just can't hire them. But I would imagine these guys are, while they are probably very skilled, you could build a training program and skill someone up here, over time.
Yeah.
I also wonder though, Heather, I would be interested, they got 32 employees. Are these guys all doing manufacturing? This strikes me, considering the business is so old, it's been around since 1984. And this strikes me as the type of business that would have a dedicated 2 accountants and a receptionist. And it strikes me as there might be some overspend on the human capital side. This could be could be one of those businesses where you could save a lot of money by bringing some overseas labor into it.
Yeah, very, very good point. And something like you said, the clue there is since 1984. And yeah, do you really need 32 people? One of the things I found interesting in the, post-COVID analyzing businesses was how many small businesses had too many employees. And when COVID hit, it taught them they didn't need them. And they cut their staff permanently. And you could see these great improvements in margin that had nothing to do with, it was before inflation really kicked in, had nothing to do with raising prices, and had everything to do with, we just had too many people and they really weren't productive. But we were super loyal. These are the stories that I heard. We were super loyal and we liked them. But when, we had the chance during COVID, we cut the staff. So yeah, I think that's a good point. There's a lot of businesses that have been around a long time that still have too many people.
And I think that's what's going on across the whole economy, even right now. The whole tech sector had a ton of layoffs this year. I think businesses everywhere are realizing, do I need all these people? And if I do they have to be located in the United States of America or not?
I'm working with a business right now in freight brokerage, and their back office is in Medellin, Colombia. And they rave about it. They said it's a fantastic back office. And one of the guys goes there every couple months and spends time there and says it's just a fantastic environment. So yeah, right. This is all starting to happen. But these companies that have been around since 1984, maybe they're not the adopters of these kinds of new techniques. So good point there. Good find. Yep. That you could improve the margin maybe. I also wonder, lending wise, is this the kind of business banks have a really hard time with someone who doesn't have a healthcare background, for example, coming into a healthcare business? I'm trying to imagine what kind of person, what kind of background a bank would be okay with on this one. Would it be an auto repair background, or a little bit of healthcare management, so they understand, the customer better, or, maybe people out of both of those worlds would be a good fit.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a good point. I do think this is a little bit more accessible because I don't know how much healthcare you're actually doing. You're building trailers, you're probably reading the manuals for the MRI machines. I don't know how healthcare-y this is. That would be something to understand if you were diligencing the business. Heather, from a lender point of view, do you like or hate the fact that they say they've got all these different types of businesses and service lines?
I like the diversity of the different lines, but right away as a lender, I would say, okay, break that down for me. Some of them maybe are just 1% and they're just in a list to make a list long. I want to know really kind of where are we concentrated? What are the core services that you're offering? And then sometimes, depending on how I understand those answers, I might dig into the margins on each one and how they compare, because they're not all going to be the same. And there may be some opportunities there for a new buyer to come in and say, let's get rid of these low margin services that are also low volume. But that's how I would look at that. The part I thought you were going to ask me was about all the FF&E and equipment,
Oh,
because
yeah.
this is always this is always highlighted as if it's such a great, look at all this stuff you're getting for the money. As a lender, no, I'm never really that excited about a CapEx heavy business. That's what it says to me. It says, oh boy, yeah, you're getting a bunch of stuff that you're going to have to keep running and replace and repair, and it's going to cost you money. And there's no way that the seller was consistently spending the same amount every year on that stuff. So there's no way I can figure out how much you're going to have to spend. And then, the other thing that we see a lot with these kinds of businesses is that the equipment's usually very run down by the time they're selling the business. And you're going to have to spend a lot more than you think that in year one. And let's just say the first 18 months getting, replacing, repairing, fixing, buying new stuff. And so it adds another layer to the analysis that will always be kind of murky. We will never know until you buy the business and you find out, and we do our best, but that it's just kind of makes it harder.
The deferred maintenance piece is something that bites a lot of buyers if they don't think to really assess it. Hopefully they have a lender that asks the hard questions. But a lot of times people buy like a trucking fleet and that's on the verge of breakdown, right? And then they incur all of this CapEx, that they didn't budget for. A lot of times I see like classic, I don't mean to throw our friend Hal here under the bus, but the $2.7 million of FF&E, I have never seen a broker actually like mark the FF&E at fair value. It is always based on like what we paid for it, like 100% of the time. So like, I know this is perfectly round, $2.7 million, right? It's always like we have bought $2.7 million worth of stuff over the last 10 years. And thus, look, you're getting $2.7 million of stuff. And it's like, hello, depreciation. Like all this stuff is not new. And further, like I think, this FF&E, it appears to be installed like in their plant. It's like paint booths and equipment and stuff like that. The only time I will ever ascribe any value at all to any FF&E is, could I sell it for whatever value, right? Is this a truck that I can sell and the buyer can drive it away, and how much will they pay me for it? That is how much I value the FF&E. But like, you've invested in this paint booth that you've built, which I believe it cost you money, but you can't like tear it out and sell to somebody else. Like it's just there. Like it's never turning back into cash. And if it's not ever turning back into cash, then I don't put any value on FF&E.
And nor should you. And by the way, folks sometimes come to lenders thinking, well, you've got all this collateral. You got $2.7 million. What do you want? And no, it's the same exact analysis that you just said for the lender. What's this worth if I had to sell it? Most of it's zero. And we know this from actual liquidation data. When banks do have to go and actually liquidate a loan because it's defaulted, we have percentages that we know will, on average, collect out of certain assets. And for equipment, it's like 10 or 15%. And that's probably generous. That's probably generous. A lot of it's gone, by the way, also for the lender. A lot of it's already gone. If you've got a defaulted loan, it's not even there. So no, the reality is that's not going to look like collateral to a lender.
Right. Now, to the credit of Hal in pricing this, it does not appear as though he has priced $2.7 million of FF&E into the valuation of the business, because this is a business that's doing 1.1 million of cash flow and he's asking $5 million for it. So that's, 4.5 times. Like, is it a little rich? Yeah, but it's not $2.7 million high, I don't think.
Yeah, it's in the range of, sanity here. Yeah, it's probably should be more in the fours. And of course, it really would depend on if we knew what the historical cash flow was. This is what drives me crazy about these biz buy sell listings, is this just 1 year? And we kind of need to know what the prior years looked like. And I wonder if COVID caused this business to grow. Maybe, maybe the demand on the healthcare system, it was really wild there for a while in all kinds of different pockets in healthcare. Perhaps they grew after 2020. And you just want to see if that's sustainable. I'd love to know that.
Yeah, I don't know. But I mean, overall, so that's the FF&E. What do you make of the inventory here? So there's $900,000 of inventory. Let's assume it's kind of work in process, right? So let's assume this is like 2 or 3 trailers that are in varying states of construction that are presumably to be delivered to a client who has maybe put down 50% and maybe still owes you 50%. Like, how do you value that inventory in the deal? I mean, they say it's included to their credit, which I appreciate.
Yeah, it should be included. But it's still very hard because it becomes sort of part of the working capital peg, the net working capital peg that you try to negotiate. Because if they have excess, maybe the seller gets to keep some of that. That gets really hard when there's WIP involved, work in process. And so what you try to do is you try to close the loan. Speaking of picking a time to close the loan, you try to close the loan at a low point. Like, you try to pick a date where you think most of the stuff will be delivered and there won't be too many in process orders. But, the bigger the business, the harder that is to do. And you have to have a really good accountant or Q of E provider to help you all the way towards close, account for the work in process properly. If there's deposits, you may also have deferred revenue, right? Depends on what stage of the work in process. You have to know what percentage completion we are. And you have to know whether we have billings in excess of costs or costs in excess of billings. And I tell you what, in small businesses, that's really hard. Their accounting is usually not that good, so that you'll have good visibility into this. So it makes the working capital situation at closing pretty murky.
Yeah. And you also see, like, let's assume these are 50% paid for with a deposit, and then the customer needs to pay another 50% upon delivery. A lot of times you'll have a seller ask for that money. Like, hey, that's my money.
Yes.
Like, we already did the work. And sometimes, to some degree, they're right if they've incurred all the cost, right? Or sometimes they're not right at all if they've incurred almost none of the cost and you, buyer, have to finish all the trailers, right? So there's going to be an argument there on each. And it's not resolvable, but like, I would be prepared to have that argument if I was buying this business.
Every work in process business has that argument. You're absolutely right. And I agree with the seller in some cases. If it's really done at the time of close, they kind of earned it. But at some point, you're selling your business. This is the other side. You're selling your business. It's going to be, we're buying it on a multiple of annual EBITDA. That's kind of already been accounted for. So that does make it makes a greater risk of broken deals.
Yeah, it's just
those kinds of arguments.
It's hard to get deals done, just period. Right. I mean, this business, I think, is a great illustration of that, because on the face of it, it seems like a good business, right? Like, we look at a lot of deals on this show that I wouldn't touch with a 10-foot pole. This has no obvious flaws here from the listing. Mm-hmm. It seems to be priced semi-reasonably, or at least in a place where you can negotiate to a reasonable price. But it's got some hair on it, as far as the FF&E and the work in process and all that stuff. But it just kind of illustrates, even a good business, it's just hard to get stuff over the finish line.
Yeah. This one, you just need a really good Q of E provider. You need to be a good accountant yourself to make sure that you close correctly and you price it correctly. But I think it's a great business. I think there's a really nice business here.
Yeah. So I'd get the book on this one. Like, I don't know that I'd pay 4.5 times. I'd like to be kind of in the 3.5 range for this thing. But you're in the ballpark.
And I'll get you the SBA loan. Just come give me a call.
There you go. Perfect. This is a good one. I like it.
I do too.
All right. Anything else?
No.
All right. We'll wrap it up. Thanks for listening to Acquisitions Anonymous. We will see you guys next time.